I was a chunky, fat kid, and then I was always a little bit of an outsider, and people didn't know what to expect. And I always said, like, I'm going to prove you guys wrong.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. In this show, I will introduce you to ideas, concepts, and mindsets that will open your mind to a new world of well-being and personal life growth. Through eye-opening interviews, we elevate people in the world doing amazing things for humanity and share insights that will shift you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate version of you. Today we have a very special guest on the show, the Olympic and world champion swimmer, multiple gold medalist and elite swimming coach, Michael Klim, to talk to us about what it takes to compete at an Olympic level and when undeniable talent and purpose meet. Michael talks to us about how he juggles life's ups and downs with a strong mindset, and also how taking time for self-care is critical to happiness. In this episode, Michael makes us feel like anything is possible if you put your mind to it. So I can't wait for you to enjoy this episode of Things You Can't Unhear with Michael Klim.
Good morning, Maritza. Thanks for having me.
I'm pretty thrilled to be in the presence of a world champion many times over.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to talk to you as well.
Now, on this podcast, Michael, we talk a lot about our life's purpose and finding our special talents or finding meaning for the reasons we get out of bed every day. And you seem to be one of the lucky ones in life who has found your talent really, really young. You know, I'm quite jealous of you. It's something that I've searched for a long time. So I should say envious, not jealous. But tell us about how your swimming life started and when you realised you had some serious skills.
Yeah, look, it's a pretty interesting. My journey is on reflection. It's pretty interesting, and some of it, has a lot of sliding door moments. And I feel like for me, swimming actually, in a sense, I discovered it very early on in my life. And, just to give you a bit of background, I'm a Polish migrant, and my parents arrived in Australia in 1989. But prior to that, we were traveling around the world a lot, Dad was working with the Polish consulate, and we were based in India for 4.5 years. I was between the age of 1 and 5, and as Dad was going off to work, he would drop myself, my sister and Mum off to the local country club, which is, they're very colonial kind of structure back then, and pick us up a few hours later. So, with that climate, I was in the water from probably the age of 1.5, 2. So I sort of learned to swim at the age of, probably the same time I learned to walk. So swimming has been, and I had a real instant affinity with the water. I was spending hours and hours in the pool, and it's something that grew with me. So as we left India when I was 5, and we went back to Poland, I kept swimming, and then Germany. It was something that remained constant while all these other things were changing around my life. And I was changing schools, changing languages, circles of friends, etc. But I always felt really comfortable that I could, even though I was kind of an introverted kid and probably shy a little bit, but I was much more comfortable when it came to being around water and being around a swimming fraternity. So when I arrived in Australia at the age of 11, I think I ended up signing up to a swimming club before I even enrolled into school. So swimming was something that, as a kid, you want to grasp onto something that you're good at, and you get a little bit of recognition, bit of stability. So for me, swimming was the constant that while everything else was changing and was a bit of a whirlwind sort of childhood. I became and then when I arrived in Australia, I continued, and I was one of those really annoying kids that, used to push all the older kids in training, and I'll probably get ridiculed for that a lot. And I got my nicknames from the older kids. My nickname at swimming was Lumpy and Chunky because it's fat little kid. And probably long story short, in the sense that I was very lucky that I found this talent early on in my life, and obviously it's given me so much, in my career and life after sport. But it's I identified it, by accident really, very early on.
a happy coincidence. Do you
Yeah.
believe in destiny or fate, or perhaps a life purpose that is meant for us?
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes I think you need to create things in a way. I think we're sort of, I mean, there's a lot of cliches goes around with that being the master of your own destiny. And, I sort of tend to sometimes feel like you can manifest things if you in a certain direction. And if you have the right intent, I think I use the things like PPI, purpose, presence, integrity, or attention, attitude, also. All these sort of things that I feel that if you're in your right mindset and if you have a certain passion for the right thing, I think you can sort of manifest a lot of the things that you want.
Yeah.
So for me, swimming, I never questioned. People say, oh, how do you sacrifice, not going on school camp, and how do you sacrifice getting up at 4:30 in the morning? And so for me, the mindset, it wasn't a sacrifice, it was my choice. That's what I wanted to do. So it's how you look at it. And for me, that was the most enjoyable thing I could be doing. And, and because I approached it in that sense, I think it, gave a lot back to me.
You had that mindset really young, and that's something that people really look for in their lives. And that's why I call that sort of luck in a way, because it was almost like a gift that was given to you. I mean, I threw both of my kids in the pool at 6 months as well, and they're definitely not champion swimmers in any way or shape or form, unfortunately, or fortunately, because I know there's very early wake-up calls for parents who are dropping their kids off at pools every day. But it's so true, right? It's like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the pool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now it's funny because my kids, none of them want to pursue swimming. They all swim pretty well, but they've all found sort of interest outside of it. My son's into ball sports, tennis and basketball. My daughter surfs and does horse riding, which is quite different. And my youngest does gymnastics, and they all love it. But my nephews are mad, and my sister rang me this morning after dropping her son off at 5:30 at the pool, and she's like, how did you do this for 20 odd years or 30 years? I'm like, I said, I've got no idea how I did it.
You just had that drive. It's obviously something that came easy to you at the start, but you certainly worked hard at it every single day. Now, is it something you set goals for as a youth?
Yeah, as a kid, my first ever Olympic memory, a vivid Olympic memory, and this is, it's something that still sticks with me to this day. I was actually living in Germany. We were living in Hamburg at the time, and we knew that we were sort of heading towards Australia. Dad had sort of got a contract, and we had probably 2 years until we were going to end up in Australia. And I was watching the 1988 Olympic Games, and the 200 freestyle was taking place, and watching the commentary in German. They had the Germans had a favourite by the name of Michael Gross, the Albatross. There was Matt Biondi, who was one of the best sprinters ever, and then we had Duncan Armstrong. So, as in we Australia now, so that was one of the greatest races of Olympic history, seeing Duncan Armstrong swim over the top of these two massive men from Germany and the US, and I remember like that atmosphere, that race, the commentary. Something that I felt I wanted to be part of. And then so I went from there, and it was just, I always had that drive for training. There was always a little bit of a, I'm going to show you what I can do attitude as well, a little bit, because I was a chunky, fat kid. And then I was always a little bit of an outsider, and people didn't know what to expect. And I always said, like, I'm going to prove you guys wrong type of thing as well. I don't know why.
You certainly showed them, didn't you?
Yeah. But I think there is a little bit of that. But then also, as a teen or, a kid, you sort of want to get recognition, and you want to be accepted, and, be recognized. So I think swimming was the thing that I was good at, and I just sort of ran with it. And, but yeah, so that Olympic memory for me was, something that drove me for a long time. And then when you get to a teen level, you start, working towards racing against the best kids in the state and then the nation, and then you obviously get to national level, which comes around 16, 17. So, you're constantly measuring yourself around peers that are in the same event, and then, you start looking at times around the world when you get a little bit older, and it just progresses. So you have goals that you want to sort of set and times, and I was very fortunate. I was plugged from a crowd of many juniors, and I tapped on the shoulder when I was 15 about, moving away from home, and I did move away from home when I was 16 and went up to Canberra and trained at the Australian Institute of Sport. So again, people say, why did you sacrifice moving away from home at the age of 16? Well, I said, it's not a sacrifice, it's a choice. You know, I was very fortunate that I got to swim with the best athletes around the world. I was training with Alexander Popov and some of the best swimmers that Australia had ever produced. And, you know, I had these people who had great knowledge. I had the best physiologists, best coaches, best nutritionists. But it's funny, you know, I was still very fresh and green, and I didn't probably get the most out of them until I was a bit older, and I had a few negative experiences in the pool that I really needed to regroup. But I can elaborate on that a little bit later.
You got a fire back in your belly with the negative experiences. So as a teenager, you obviously weren't attending school because you were at the AIS. How did you manage balance with your education and training?
Look, I was going to Wesley College up to grade 11, and then when I moved in Melbourne, and then when I moved to the Institute, I was very fortunate. I was studying the International Baccalaureate, and they were very supportive in the sense that I completed Year 12 by correspondence, and I didn't complete it with flying colours, but I completed it.
You can't be good at everything, Michael.
Yeah, I tried, but no, I was sort of academically. I definitely probably once I moved to Canberra, unfortunately my focus, you know, probably shifted a little bit, and you know, I finished school, and I'm very glad that I did the IB, but you know, it was tricky. You know, I was going to different schools to get a few sort of classes in, and then obviously flying back to Melbourne for exams, and then obviously liaising with teachers, and it's, you know, it probably prepared me for kind of life after sport in a sense, trying to prioritise and be organised and be structured. And I wasn't always great at it, but it was, it wasn't necessarily easy. A lot of the kids or the swimmers in Canberra were going to a local school just around the corner, so it was very straightforward. You know, they'd get in the bus after swimming training and get dropped off in the afternoon, whereas I had to sort of be my own, you know, be my own master in a sense.
That's a lot of strength in your mindset that you'd need to have in order to do that. And mindset actually is obviously a huge aspect to much of people's success. How did your mindset at the time, really in the peak of your career, play a part to your massive success story?
I think in the peak of my career, I would say, so when I 97 through to 2000 or mid-2001, I would say it was so narrow focused. It was all about performance. It was all about, you know, achieving the highest level of performance possible within my body. So, you know, I was working with Speedo at the time on getting the best technology, having the best suit that I possibly could. I was working with physiologists out of Canberra to making sure that I was, you know, doing the best possible training sets and, you know, recovering the best way I could. I was traveling. I probably did there was a period where I did 150 races in a calendar year. So I was literally racing every second weekend. So there was these things, and then just building the team around me. So it was all about, you know, always everything from, you know, so I tried to innovate as being an athlete, because I had a really negative experience at the 96 Olympics where I went in number one in the world and I missed the final by 6/100ths of a second. My best time would have got me silver. Yeah, it was a little bit, because I was, you know, I was that, you know, the kid out of school with, you know, this opportunity of a lifetime to win gold for Australia, but I failed in my eyes. But if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have gone back to the drawing board and you know, I started swimming with straight arms and changed my technique, developed the suits, you know, changed my mindset in the sense that I was so nervous in 96 that I never wanted to feel that again. So I thought, if I'm racing every second weekend with the same approach, every time I got up on the blocks, I wanted to break the world record. So if I got up at the Lake Burley Griffin meet, for example, then, you know, the World Championships or the Pan Pacific Games, my mindset was absolutely the same. So I would just I'd be rehearsing the same strategy every single time. So with swimming, you know, the race goes, I was swimming for 48 up to 50 seconds. So there's not much that you can really think of that while the race is happening. It's very automatic. It's all about practice and perfect practice and just rehearsing, when you're going to break out, when you're going to take a breath, what are you going to focus on into the turn, how are you going to break out of the turn, when the lactic acid starts, kicking into your system, what are you going to think about? And still, and it's such simple little things, but I was trying to rehearse that every single day.
Wow. You obviously had 100% focus. That second that you jump in the pool, what goes through your mind? Is it almost like a meditative state? Are you thinking about anything, or are you just going for it? Like, to be an elite athlete racing at the top of their game, what is going through your mind at that particular time?
When you're competing, you really just focus on it's all about control. You have maybe 3 or 4 or maybe 5 different cues throughout the race. If it's, for example, sometimes it's breath control and sometimes it's rhythm. And it's because you really, as I said, it's such an intense situation and environment that you can't overthink. So you have to let things happen, and you have to trust yourself that you've done enough work that you're going to be good enough. And then, so it's not necessarily meditative. It's kind of, it's control. It's control and effort. So, and then as the more you can, the better you are prepared, normally the better you are at the end of the race. But in saying that, a lot of people now, for me, swimming is very meditative, and I love just being in the water and being submerged and swimming within this medium. But I think, when I was training up to 100 kilometers a week, it's funny because we would still count our strokes on every single lap. So it's not like we were absent-minded. We were still focusing on every single stroke. So, and those 2 hours in the water would go really quickly because you can't be just, occasionally, obviously, you drift away. But because we are focusing on certain, drills and efforts, etc., it's really important that you're focused on a certain outcome within that session. So, makes the time go a lot quicker. But now, for me, swimming is my mindfulness practice, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait to hear a little bit more about that soon. But you obviously started winning the medals and became recognisable in your career quite quickly.
Yeah, it came from me after 96, the disappointment, and I made a few changes straight after those Olympics. Those results came really quickly, and I was very fortunate that in 97, at the end of 97, I broke my first world record in the 100 butterfly, then went to the World Championships in 98 and won 7 medals, and then four of them were gold. So I had this kind of went from this really low period or, low experience, and but I was able to bounce back really quickly. And I might say I was still pretty young and naive, and I was still obviously with the expectation of Sydney around the corner in 2000. I was still very much focused, and I didn't really think about it too much. My world did change in the sense that I was recognised, obviously with my bald head and things like that, whatever. But and there was obviously a little bit of support from the corporates and the attention. There was certainly a lot of attention and focus leading into Sydney, and a little bit of scrutiny, and I guess there was that expectation not only from the public but media, etc. But I kept my swimming environment very small and in a sense pretty sheltered. So we travelled around the world a lot. I wasn't always based in Australia, so I got out and I still enjoyed the process. I was very fortunate that I got to travel around the world. I got to go altitude training in France and US, and I used to sometimes pinch myself that I was one of the best swimmers in the world and representing my country, and so it was very competitive. So that focus was all about coming back and trying to do the best you can in Sydney. So even though I hit my straps in 97, I still had unfinished business.
Yeah, you certainly had a lot to be grateful for, which is absolutely amazing. Now, you retired around 10 years ago, and obviously things have changed for you now, and you've moved into other successes. But there's obviously so many elite athletes and sports people who peak at a young age, and after retirement, they don't know what to do from there. And you have been one of the Australian standout Olympians who's continued your success in other ways by building businesses and involving yourself in a world of well-being.
Yeah.
Tell us
Look,
about this. Tell us how you managed life after retirement.
Yeah, look, I must say that I was very fortunate that throughout my entire career I had great support from family, especially my parents, that kept me very grounded and made sure that I was stable financially and had invested in the right way, that that had something after the sport had finished, but then also had great management in the sense that I created a brand that could continue, my personal brand, that I was stood for something that other people could resonate with. And I'm very fortunate even now that people still say, on the street, there's Michael, that swimmer guy. Whereas, I retired, in 2007. So I guess my identity is still very, very strong, which makes things a little bit easier. But I realized that obviously swimming was going to finish, and there was something that I need to create of my own. And I didn't really obviously had a tertiary education, but I had a bit of experience into being a product myself that I helped to promote through sponsorship. I learned through how I could create my own brand eventually. And I was approached by 2 or 3 different skincare companies at one period, and I thought, well, there's something in this. Why are these guys contacting me about skincare? And obviously I had a lot of skin exposed. So, and I started, so I started, looking into the market, and there was certainly an opportunity to create a men's skincare brand. There was Australian made, that was created by another Aussie bloke that Aussie guys could resonate with. And then Milk & Co was born that way. Was very, I had an A4 bit of paper. There was my business plan, and created this sort of 3 SKUs that I presented to Maya, and they ended up taking that. So I ended up launching Milk & Co in 2008 in August, which I didn't end up going to Beijing, but we launched Milk & Co in August of 2008, and the brand kind of grew. Organically. We ended up launching baby range after that when I started having kids, and then we moved into a women's offer and things like that. But it's been an amazing journey, very insightful, and I was able to kind of tap into those key learnings I had in my swimming, which was, creating a great team and a great culture, which I had at the Institute of Sport and the Australian swim team. Gaining a lot of knowledge about myself and my competitors, so we're doing the same with our brand. Innovating, so that I think, within business, you're constantly innovating. You have to, otherwise you get swallowed up by, the big players. And I had to innovate after 96, after my disappointment. And something that you touched on, finding that passion and purpose. So obviously I had very strong passion and purpose as a kid, and obviously throughout my competitive swimming career. But how do I reproduce that into probably, I didn't have a natural insight into skincare. I didn't have a natural insight into business. So I had to sort of, what was it that was going to drive me day to day?
I love the way that you used your achievements to grow your business and to obviously fill the time that you used in training to really accelerate the next part of your career. And I think that's fantastic. Well-being's come into your life quite significantly as well. And I'm really big on getting more men to talk publicly about their self-care and healing modalities that keep them thriving mentally. So what practices do you bring into your life that have helped you through the ups and downs?
Yeah, look, I must say I've had I think we all have challenging periods in our lives, and I went through. Obviously retirement was an interesting period where I had to, I guess, like sort of recreate myself as well. Obviously, and I had this sort of new world where I moved to Bali, and I was living overseas, and I was still running a business back in Australia, and I was, going through a divorce and all of these sort of things. So there was a lot of pressures, external pressures that I probably wasn't ever exposed to before. And initially I removed swimming and exercise as a staple in my life. And I very, very quickly identified that's a constant that's got to remain, and it's going to remain in my life forever. So For me now, going to the gym at least twice or three times a week it's a non-negotiable. I've realised that I had to prioritise a lot of things in my life, and I think men, obviously have the responsibility of being, the breadwinners sometimes in a lot of the ways, and they carry that burden, and I had to sort of realise that, hang on, if I look after myself more and I'm more productive and I'm in a better headspace and I'm better physically, emotionally, socially, I'm actually a better person, I'm more productive, and I'm a better father, a better partner, etc. So I started not feeling guilty about, doing things for myself.
We can absolutely make ourselves feel so guilty when we take that time out for ourselves, and we shouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an investment into other people's lives in a sense, So I think Bali's been really good for me in a way that I can sort of, I can exercise regularly. I do yoga when I can, or do meditation daily. It only takes 12 to 15 minutes, but it sort of recenters me, and I've learned to sort of say no to things that I feel aren't in the best interest of myself and my family and my business. I was definitely a yes person, and I'd try and do as many things as I possibly could. And I think one year I did 24 return trips from Bali to Australia. Wow. And, I physically started to suffer. Mentally, I was exhausted, and, and then I'm still kind of trying to get myself together from that, to be honest. So, I found what the things that sort of I enjoy, that sort of unstructured activity or exercise. For example, I go for a surf with my kids. I have my two oldest that surf, and we just have a ball out there. I hardly catch a wave because I'm too busy watching them. But
how old are the kids now?
I've got Frankie, who's 8, Rocco, who's 11, and Stella's 13. So they're all got different interests, which makes it really tricky sometimes. But they're very fun, and so they keep me on the toes, especially the 13-year-olds. So that's the hardest period. I
can imagine. I'm not looking forward to that too much, I've got to say. You've got quite a well-documented modern family setting, and you're obviously both such great role models to your children. Have you seen a lot of your sort of personality and influence come out in them?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've realised, the kids are so influenced not only by their environment that they're in, but also by obviously the role models in their lives. So I think, my ex-wife and I, Lindy, we're sort of over a year ago, we obviously just sat down and decided that, they are having our differences previously. We wanted to do the utmost for our children moving forward. So, being creating an environment that they felt happy and comfortable in, and so it's definitely makes life a lot easier, and they are happier. There's no surprises, etc. So I think it's also another learning period in my life as well.
What doesn't kill us makes us definitely stronger. And if you can actually learn from all of these darker moments in our lives and turn them into something that's going to change us positively, then you've won in my eyes.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, when we go through that period of massive change like a divorce, and you do that to be ultimately happier, and sometimes people go into this period where it's actually goes worse. We say, well, we didn't, this wasn't the plan. It was just to create a happier future for both of us, rather than. Absolutely.
That's so true. I remember I'm a child of divorced parents, and they divorced when I was 17, and I remember them not being happy when they split. And I thought this was about to be about you being happier. It's such a good point that you raise there. But you both certainly look very happy now, and obviously made the right decisions for yourselves. And what's Bali life like? What's it life living in a different community and experiencing sort of the joys of coming back here and also exploring what Bali has to offer?
Yeah, Bali life is obviously for us. It's been very helpful in a sense that obviously I have the kids week on, week off, and it has obviously the perks that you can do that, and having some help and, getting around the drivers, etc. So those luxuries that probably I couldn't afford back here in Australia. But it also is, to remember Bali's still in the sense of very developing place, and Indonesia being almost a still third world country. So there's there's that diversity between the poor and some of the expat kind of community. So I think, it's great for the kids to see the different culture within Bali, and they've grown up with that for the last 7 years. And I think they appreciate what they have. I think they still spoiled occasionally, but I think they have been exposed. Exactly. But I think they've been exposed to poverty, and have been exposed to, kids that have very little, and hopefully they will take that with them forever. But I think that we've had a really good balance in the sense that, I still get back to Australia. They and the kids, fly back as well quite a lot. So we still have family in Australia, my sister and nephews, and they have cousins, etc. So I think life in Bali has been great for them in the terms of the personal and physical development, and very sort of very healthy lifestyle. We've got an outdoor living area, and sort of literally they're outside the whole day really until bedtime. So they're in the water or playing sport and being very active. So
we would love to do that in Melbourne too, but it's 13 degrees in summer, so unfortunately,
and then 40 the next day.
Exactly right. So you're part of some retreats in Bali as well. Can you tell us a little bit about those and what your involvement is?
Yeah, so I did Chosen Experiences, which is Chosen as well. I started with them nearly 5 years ago. So Chosen is kind of was funny because it's initially just created. This was more about lifestyle optimization, and the experience was almost a 6-star experience in terms of accommodation and food, but it was very much created for very driven and already almost successful individuals that had a really great sort of focus and had a great vision, but sometimes may have either been exposed to burnout and probably or wanted a change in their careers, and the sort of that the week within Chosen, we sort of try and expose the people to some adventure, expose them with through physical and fitness training to open up their understanding of that, nutrition, mindfulness, and there's a big knowledge component to it. So we have some breakaway sessions either through goal setting or if it's in journaling, etc. But it's always based on, we have locations such as Iceland, New Zealand, Bali, South Africa. So it's very, we're trying to get people out into nature. There is an adventure component, so people sort of take risks and overcoming those. It's a week of discovery a lot of the time for people personally, because they have a lot of time to themselves, but then there's also time with the people that are there within the week, but it's very, very boutique in a sense that there's no more than 10 people. So it's a very sort of close group that, we have this huge alumni now that people kind of share this and amazing stories, whether either, looking out for a change of career, or they need to, a lot of these people are very successful, so they're driven, but sometimes they're lacking in finding balance in their life, or how to maybe sleep better, or how to eat better, and finding that quiet moment. We do yoga daily, a sunset yoga session, so just having that real sort of downtime before dinner and winding down. So there's all these sort of there's also some great cognitive experiences that we provide, and because it's based in this amazing setting, it's a very memorable week. So I sort of help out with some of the physical sessions and a couple of the breakaway sessions. But
I think it's critical that we do take time out to ourselves to do things like this every now and then, and just sort of reflect on where life's headed. And a lot of people get down a track, 10 years down a track, and realise they're not happy in their career or not happy with where they are in their lives. And doing something like this really awakens that perception to perhaps start something new or get out of your comfort zone a little bit. So, I highly, highly recommend retreats. I think they're so good. Now, Michael, what do you believe are the main cornerstones of a happy life?
Look, obviously everyone has different things make different people happy. So obviously the things that I cherish is having, I've been very fortunate creating a life that you have an ability to choose. So for me, I've been able to very fortunate to choose, to live in a lifestyle where I can, obviously, my kids live in Bali and creating a life that is conducive to a healthy lifestyle. So I think it's, doing the things that you enjoy. I think that's really important. I think, a lot of the time we get stuck in a very mundane routine, which, I think over time can create, I think people get in the rut. And it's, so for me doing, like you said, obviously taking time for yourself. And then I think it's really important to have the right people in your life too. I've realized I've got such a great network of friends that, call and see how I'm going and vice versa, that there's a sense of support. I think that's a really good, I think in life, feeling that you're not necessarily always alone, being present, I think it makes, having that time with your kids and so being almost, I think it's, for me, it's been really simple in the sense that having that choice to do the things that I enjoy, having the time to do them, spending time with family and friends. And unfortunately, I've had a little bit of a tricky time with my health, but I think ultimately, because of that, I've realized how important health is too. So we take that for granted. And, even though I've always very fit and healthy, I've gone through a period where I haven't been all that healthy. So I've realized that once I've prioritized my health, my kids, and the times and family and friends to realize what is important to me.
It's really the simple things, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Who have been some of your biggest teachers in life?
I'd probably say, obviously, besides my parents, because they're if it wasn't for the this kind of will in childhood, I would never have sort of been exposed to all these different cultures from living in India and Germany and Poland and then obviously ending up in Australia. So I think they opened up I sort of became very transient in the sense that I don't like being stuck in one place very long. Yeah. So I think that's I think having the ability to travel it's another thing that comes back to choice. Makes me very happy. But I think my coach, when I moved to Canberra at the age of 16, I had two coaches. One when I was that youngster in my early teens called Gene Jackson, and then when I moved away from home, this Russian coach became my father figure for nearly 8 years, and I think he was instrumental in creating this kind of that mindset that we spoke about of just, of peak performance. So he's been fundamental in a sense that, to get the best out of myself in the pool. So probably that.
Well, you're obviously an incredible person and an absolute world champion. We can't take that away from you. But I want our listeners to be able to take something away for themselves from every episode that we share on this podcast. And for us who are out here listening and who may have a talent or an incredible skill or even a business that they want to see go the distance or take it to the next level, what would you tell them? What actions would you advise that they take to really step their mark up and be seen in the world?
I can only talk from experience, and obviously if you have an idea and you have or something that you want to create and something that's a passion of yours, I think it's a lot of the time, a lot of people sit around dinner tables and talk about ideas, but a lot of the time they don't take that, take the plunge. So I think it's having a go. So a lot of the time not having regrets by saying, oh yeah, I had this idea, and I met this lady. When you get I actually found these plastic strips that seal a plastic bag,
Yep.
those little ones you can buy at IKEA. And I met this one lady once at a dinner party, and she's like, I've got an idea. I want to create these plastic clips that will seal your food and whatever. And then I was like, oh yeah, whatever. As if you're ever going to do that. And then I was going through IKEA shopping with the kids or something, and then I saw these aisles of plastic strips that were, so to
Were they
see
hers?
this lady, it was her.
Oh,
and
she did it.
She did it, and she sold a business to one of the biggest retailers in the world. So having someone to talk about a simple idea like just a plastic clip that will keep your food fresh, to then obviously see it through. That's what I really enjoy. So I think if you've got an idea, see it through.
See it through. I love that. And it's so important because so many of us just sit on our hands and are too scared to jump forward and do something about it and, or get rejected or just have the nose thrown at us left, right and centre.
Exactly.
But just
exactly.
get going with it, people. Thank you
That's it.
so much, Michael. Definitely been
No
one of
worries.
my favourite interviews that I've shared on this podcast. And
Thanks a
really,
lot.
Yeah, really thank you for being part of the show. Thank you for listening to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Let us know what came up for you. You can find us on Instagram at Things You Can't Unhear or on my personal page at Maritza_Barone. If someone you know will benefit from hearing this show, please be sure to share it with them. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and keep up to date with what's next on the show. And as always, my friends, be happy, be healthy, be conscious, and be kind.